My name is Ashley Carter. I'm 30. And today I cut the ribbon on Nova Voice's global headquarters. 12 floors of glass, steel, and everything they said I'd never build. 10 years ago, I left home with a duffel bag, $237, and a blueprint drawn in Sharpie. My mother's parting gift? A smirk. You'll be back begging in a month. She was wrong. This morning, my inbox lit up. Subject: Ashley, we're in trouble. After a decade of silence, they suddenly remembered my name. Because now the banks do too. Should I answer? Would you? Drop a comment below. And hit subscribe to hear how the girl they kicked out built an empire they now want a piece of. The suitcase barely closed, but my mother's words slammed shut the door harder than any lock ever could. I zipped the bag with trembling fingers, each tug catching on fabric I didn't have time, or room, to fold properly. Outside the window, dusk settled over the cul-de-sac like a muted curtain, but inside everything vibrated with judgment. The kitchen light glared yellow, revealing every flaw in the peeling wallpaper and in me. Dinner had been short and sharp. I said one sentence. Just one. I'm not joining the company after graduation. Silence fell. Forks froze midair. Then my mother's voice cutting through the air like a jagged blade. Excuse me? She didn't wait for an explanation. Linda Carter rarely did. Coding? You think that's a future? You think screens and buttons will feed you when you're 25 and jobless? Across the table, my father exhaled slowly, not even glancing my way. Mark Carter, regional director of Carter Building Supply, was a man who had long ago learned that silence was easier than siding with a disappointment. I already got into OSU, I said quietly. Computer science. I'm building something, Mom. An app. It's for schools that don't... The chair scraped back violently. She stood. You want to play with gadgets? Then do it on your own dime. Her eyes were two cold bullets. You'll be back begging in a month. Now I stood at the door, my shoes unlaced, jacket tied around the suitcase handle. No ride, no savings, just 3 pairs of jeans, a couple of notebooks, and a flash drive in my pocket. I took one last glance at the hallway. The family photo with my brother's graduation robe, the dried lavender from Grandma's funeral. None of it had ever included me in a real way. I didn't belong in the frame. Or the business. The door slammed behind me. Outside, the night air stung. I walked 2 blocks before I found the bus stop. The bench was metal and cold. My backpack slipped off my shoulder. My phone buzzed. Zoe. You okay? Yeah, just got out. You did it. You're free. It doesn't feel like freedom. I stared at the blueprint tucked into the side pocket of my bag. A simple mock-up drawn in Sharpie and passion. Interactive quizzes for underfunded schools. My first app. I had no funding, no laptop, and barely any hope. But I had an idea. And sometimes when everything else is stripped away, that's all a person has. I pulled out my phone again, opened the voice memo, and pressed play. You'll crawl back to us. You're nothing without us. Her voice filled the empty street, sharp and cruel even through the tiny speaker. I let it play once, then stopped it. My eyes were dry, but my voice, if I spoke, would tremble. I didn't cry that night. Not because I wasn't broken, but because I refused to let them have the last word. No one tells you that chasing your dream means skipping dinner. For years. I learned that in the basement of my freshman dorm, curled up on a scratchy blanket that didn't belong to me, listening to the hum of the vending machines. The floor smelled like detergent and old pizza. But it was quiet. No one asked questions. It was the only place I could think, code, and sleep without paying rent. I juggled 3 jobs: library assistant, tutoring middle school kids in JavaScript, and washing dishes in a Thai restaurant off Telegraph. UC Berkeley wasn't cheap, and neither was survival. Most nights I didn't eat until 11 p.m., and some nights I didn't eat at all. Zoe Bennett found me there one night, asleep with my laptop on my chest and half a problem set unsolved. She didn't say anything, just plugged in her charger, sat beside me on the cold tile, and opened her IDE. That was the start. Zoe was all edges and brilliance, black nail polish, sarcasm sharp enough to draw blood, and a brain that made mine feel like a dial up connection. We weren't friends at first. We were survivalists. But survival is intimate. It erodes the distance between people faster than trust ever could. We started building something in a borrowed garage in Palo Alto during sophomore year. I had this vision. An app that could teach English, Spanish, Mandarin using voice cues, gestures, and gamified prompts. No screens, just speaking and listening. Perfect for rural schools, ESL kids, neurodivergent learners. It was wild and messy and probably way ahead of its time. We called it Nova Voice. No money, no mentors, no marketing. Just 4 a.m. code sprints and day-old bagels. My father's voice still echoed sometimes. Screens and buttons won't feed you, especially when I skipped rent to buy cloud credits. But I kept pushing. Zoe's family offered to fund her graduate school. She said no. They want me to be a lawyer. She shrugged, chewing on a pencil. I'd rather build this with you and eat beans for a decade. We applied to every pitch competition on the West Coast. Failed. Failed again. One panelist told us, "This feels like a class project, not a company." Another laughed. 2 girls with accents trying to build speech AI? Cute. We didn't flinch. We refined. We recorded hundreds of sample voices, trained the model using open source libraries, and hacked a cloud dashboard that barely functioned. But it worked. One day, I walked out of a 6-hour tutoring shift, opened my inbox, and stared. Congratulations. You've been awarded the 2017 Stanford Innovation Award grant. Amount $40,000. I dropped my phone. Zoe screamed. We danced barefoot on the garage floor. That night, we bought 2 burritos and a bottle of $7 champagne. It was the best meal of my adult life. We didn't buy furniture. We bought GPUs. At 22, sitting cross-legged on a concrete floor in a garage that smelled like soldering wires and whiteboard ink, I realized, I don't need my parents' house. I'm building something bigger, my own ecosystem. We launched our app at 3 a.m. By sunrise, 7,000 kids had downloaded it. That's when I knew I wasn't going back. 10 years, 0 calls, until now. The moonlight bled through the glass walls of the Nova Voice office, casting long shadows over Ashley's desk. At this hour, the city below was a grid of pulsing lights and muffled noise. Alive, but distant. She leaned back in her chair, her gaze tracing the steel silhouette of the Bay Bridge. This office, her empire, was the product of a decade spent clawing through silence, debt, and code. Tonight, however, she wasn't thinking about pitch decks or IPO roadshows. Her inbox was open, and there, buried beneath partnership requests and analyst inquiries, was the email. Subject: Ashley, we're in trouble. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad. She didn't click it. Not yet. Instead, her cursor drifted toward a folder she hadn't touched in years. Archive, 2013. The screen flickered as she opened it, revealing a series of voice memos, grainy and raw. She played one. You'll crawl back to us. You're nothing without us. Her mother's voice filled the quiet office like a ghost. Ashley didn't flinch. She simply closed her eyes, letting the words roll over her, the same way she had done the night she left. Zoe's voice broke the silence. Still working? Ashley turned. Zoe stood at the doorway, a half-empty coffee mug in hand, her usual hoodie replaced with a tailored blazer, IPO mode. There's an email, Ashley said, voice low. Zoe stepped closer, reading over her shoulder. Linda Carter. Wow. Haven't seen that name since? Ever. Ashley finally clicked. Ashley, we're in trouble. Your father's being investigated for tax fraud. We need help. Please, call me. No apologies, no acknowledgement. Just a plea, disguised as a command. Zoe leaned against the glass. Do you think they know who you are now? Ashley scoffed. They probably still think I fix printers. A silence stretched between them. Then Zoe added gently, "If you help them now, they'll rewrite history. You'll become their success story, their savior, not the girl they kicked out with a duffel bag." Ashley stared at the screen. Her reflection, faint and distorted, stared back. "Then maybe," she whispered, "it's time I write the truth." Zoe didn't respond. She simply nodded, her eyes never leaving Ashley's. Ashley opened a new tab, drafted a reply. "Dear Mom." Her hands were steady, her breath even. The scar hadn't faded, but it had thickened, and scars, she had learned, didn't have to mean weakness. I hit reply. And for the first time in a decade, I wrote their names, without trembling. Funny how a decade of silence ends with a dinner invitation. At the country club they once said I'd never belong to. Ashley stepped out of the sleek black town car, her heels clicking sharply against the polished stone of the Golden Pines Country Club entrance. The doorman, dressed in a starched white uniform, gave her a courteous nod, clearly unsure whether to treat her like royalty or an interloper. The last time she was here, she'd been 17, wearing a borrowed dress and standing outside the glass doors as her parents attended a business mixer inside. Her mother's voice had echoed like a slap. "That table's not for girls like you." Now she wasn't just invited. She was the guest of honor. Inside, the air was thick with quiet wealth. Oak-paneled walls, crystal chandeliers, and the subtle hum of polite conversation. Ashley spotted her parents immediately. Linda and Mark Carter were seated at a table near the back, both nursing half-empty wine glasses. Her mother's lips curled into something almost warm, while her father stood awkwardly, as if unsure whether to hug her or shake her hand. "Ashley," Linda said, rising from her seat. "You look powerful." Ashley smiled thinly. "That's because I am." The maitre d' pulled out her chair. She sat without breaking eye contact. There was a moment of silence as water was poured, menus offered, but no one reached for them. Ashley folded her hands on the table. "We're proud of you now." Her mother began, fingers fidgeting with the stem of her wine glass. "Nova Voice is impressive." Her father cleared his throat. "Look, Ash, we didn't handle things well. We know that. But the family business is struggling. We thought, maybe we could work together. You have the expertise. The media already calls you a tech visionary." Ashley tilted her head, studying them both. "Is this the part where we pretend the past never happened? Or the part where you try to fold me into your narrative now that it's convenient?" Linda let out a forced laugh. "Let's not be dramatic. We're just saying—" "Transparency," Ashley cut in. "That's my first condition. Full audit. Every transaction, every account. You open your books and I'll open my time." Her father shifted, glancing at Linda, then back at Ashley. "We just need your name, your backing. The banks trust you now." Ashley reached into her bag and pulled out a sleek silver USB. She set it on the table like a gavel. "This contains a timeline of every fund you diverted under my name when I was 17. Every cent charged to a credit card I never knew existed. That was the first thing I audited when I could afford a lawyer." Linda froze. Mark's hand gripped his fork so tightly it shook. Ashley didn't blink. "You want my help?" she continued. "Start by acknowledging what you stole. From my credit, my trust, and my future." Silence fell like a guillotine. Her phone buzzed. A message from Zoe. "Breathe. You're not 17 anymore." Ashley stood, lifting her linen napkin and placing it beside her untouched plate. My father went pale. My mother reached for the wine. I reached for the bill. They thought legacy was about blood. I built mine in code. The polished conference room of Morgan and Sloan Law gleamed with artificial calm. Glass walls, leather chairs, a mahogany table that seemed to hum with the weight of generational power. Ashley sat at its head, posture straight, fingers steepled. Outside, the lobby buzzed with quiet press movement. Zoe had handled the timing well. Across from her, Linda Carter wore pearls and a frown that tightened with every passing second. Mark sat beside her, eyes distant, a silent prop in a crumbling play. Ashley's attorney, Marianne Cole, slid a folder across the table. We've compiled all loan documents associated with the accounts opened under Ashley's name between 2013 and 2016. Here, she tapped the top sheet, are the interest charges. Here's the timeline. And this, she flipped to the final page, is the total amount owed with compounded interest. $178,200. Linda's smile was brittle. That's absurd. We had no idea. Those were bookkeeping errors. Besides, she was family. Ashley didn't flinch. I was 17. You forged my signature for student aid loans I never saw. Then told me I didn't qualify for the family scholarship because coding wasn't traditional enough. Mark cleared his throat but said nothing. Linda leaned forward. You really want to drag this out in court? We'll counterclaim for defamation. The media adores you now, but legacies crumble fast. Ashley's lips curved, not into a smile, but into something sharper. She reached into her coat pocket and placed a small recording device on the table. I've been recording everything since the country club dinner, she said calmly. Every offer, every threat, every deflection. You taught me early. Protect your own data. Linda recoiled. You wouldn't. Ashley stood. You're right. I won't need to. She stepped out of the conference room and into the lobby where cameras and microphones were already pointed her way. She didn't hesitate. Zoe nodded once from the far corner, steady as ever. Ashley turned toward the press, her voice steady as the recording played behind her on a mounted screen. You'll crawl back to us. You're nothing without us. The crowd murmured. Ashley's voice cut through it all. Being kicked out was the best investment they ever made, because it built me. Flashes erupted. Reporters leaned forward. She didn't blink. Back in the conference room, Linda stood frozen. Mark stared down at the polished table, his reflection more solid than his resolve. The headlines next day read, Disowned Teen Turns Tech Titan Demands Justice. They wanted me to come back crawling. I came back owning the land. The Tesla rolled to a gentle stop at the corner of Brookridge and Maple. Ashley didn't move at first. The hum of the engine faded, and what remained was memory. 10 years old and sharp as glass. She looked to the right. The rusted bench was still there, half hidden behind an overgrown hedge. That bench had cradled her in the cold June air as she clutched a blueprint and cried into her knees, pretending she was stronger than she felt. Today, she stepped out of the car wearing navy heels, a silk blazer, and the calm of someone who had nothing left to prove. She held the keys to Nova Voice's new global headquarters, 12 floors of smart glass, zero-emission power, and design inspired by the voice of change. The land beneath it? Once written off by her parents as useless. They'd forced her to sell her share of it to pay for grown-up responsibilities. She'd bought it back 5 years ago. Quietly, strategically. Zoe met her at the gate, grinning. Press is ready. Investors, too. Ashley smiled. Let's give them a show they'll never forget. The ribbon cutting was crisp. Cameras flashed. A drone buzzed overhead. On the glass doors behind her, the words shimmered in soft white light. Nova Voice HQ, where silence ends. She took the mic only once. Success, Ashley said, scanning the crowd, isn't revenge. It's the silence that follows after you no longer need to prove anything. The applause was genuine. She scanned the audience casually and spotted them, Linda and Mark, standing under a maple tree, far from the cameras. Not invited. Not turned away. Her mother wore a polished smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her father's hands were in his pockets, a gesture she once mistook for humility. They didn't approach during the ceremony. But after, as guests dispersed and Zoe handled final interviews, Ashley walked across the field to the old mailbox in front of what used to be the Carter guest house. She placed an envelope inside, closed the lid gently, and walked away. Inside the envelope was a certificate, the founding document of the Nova Voice Foundation, an educational fund for girls who had been abandoned, overlooked, or silenced. It carried no signature, just a seal. She turned one last time to look at the small house next door. Contractors had nearly finished restoring it. White siding, a wraparound porch, a bright yellow door. It would open in a month as a transitional shelter. No press release, no cameras, just purpose. As Ashley stepped back into the Tesla, Zoe gave her a curious glance. "Ready?" Ashley nodded. "Finally." She said I'd be back begging. I came back building shelters, and I left without needing to say goodbye. The girl they cast out with nothing but a blueprint returned with a company that rewrote the rules. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was the sharpening of truth behind closed doors. Sometimes justice doesn't come with handcuffs or courtroom applause. It arrives quietly, in the form of boundaries, balance sheets, and a name they can no longer ignore. Because when injustice is met with unwavering resolve, even the past must stand trial.